That's why I was able to. Uh-huh. Yeah. No. No. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Must be submitted at a Some of the projects being reviewed this evening have been submitted before and are now ready to be considered for further approval. For those of you who may be new to our meeting, our charge is to look at each project. Design, architecture, height, mass, and scale, and in harmony with the historical district. And that was some of it. We look overall at pretty things. Although we're not required to solicit comments from anyone other than the applicant and board members, except for demolition requests, we usually choose to allow others to express comments that might influence our decision making before the applicant presents the project and the board members have resolved any questions they might have. You were asked to sign up when you first arrived and indicate which project you wish to comment. When called on, please limit your comments to not more than 3 minutes. As always, we will review each submittal in the order that it was submitted. However, as the first order of business, we must approve the minutes of our last meeting, which were sent to the board members for review prior to the meeting. Are there any changes that need to be made? Can I have a motion?
I move that they be accepted as submitted.
And second,
I'll second.
please answer when I, yes or no, when I call your name. David,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Nancy, Jean,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
mine is yes.
All right, we'll go ahead and kick it off with public comment. So Peter Gorman.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wish to speak about 609 South Magnolia. In previous appearances before this BAR, I've expressed my appreciation for the job you do. It's a thankless job sometimes, and I appreciate that. For 609, I understand that this house was built as a Sears kit house sometime in the 1920s, making it a significant architectural element of South Magnolia in the historic district. The blocks between East Doty and 6th Street South Magnolia are one of the most intact historic streets on the east side of our historic district. Pedestrians are increasingly walking this stretch to appreciate its beauty. I know because I live on South Magnolia at 3rd. The house that you are now considering for demolition is an important part of our historic legacy. It is almost 100 years old. I recently spoke with the neighbors in the surrounding area, and a few of them expressed an interest in buying and renovating this property or moving it as an ADU to their property. Unfortunately, before they could do so, the owner of 605 South Magnolia next door bought the property and told his neighbors that he would demolish it for privacy purposes. The historic guidelines that you recently adopted do not provide for this kind of demolition. It says that demolition must be approved if the owner cannot afford to renovate the property. The owner of the property, who recently bought 609, built his own house at 605 in the past few years that Zillow estimates is worth about $750,000. If he could not afford to renovate this property, then why did he buy it? He bought it for $200,000 with no intention of ever renovating the property. Here again, Zillow says that the house is worth $470,000. Surely there is enough equity in the home to obtain a loan to renovate it. Was any due diligence given to his financial capability done by the BAR when it agreed to the provision and the guidelines that he could not afford to renovate the property? Apparently not. He told his neighbors that he bought the property to demolish it. That is not a legitimate reason under the BAR guidelines to issue a permit for demolition. In fact, it is demolition by neglect, which is also prohibited in your guidelines. The second condition that the BAR has cited for reason for demolition is, quote, retention of such structure would not be in the best interest of the majority of the community, end quote. That is an extremely subjective measure that I believe the neighborhood residents would not agree with in this case. I've spoken to many neighbors on South Magnolia and 6th Street, and they do not believe this house, they do believe this house is an asset, not a detriment to our neighborhood. A demolition permit should not be issued under either condition. I ask you to deny this permit. Thank you.
Deb and Rick Campo.
Thanks for having us here tonight.
The microphone. Thank you. We've lived in Somerville on Sumter for the past 40 or so years and have been watching what has been going on the Cedar property, 208 Cedar, and have been pleased to see that it's evolved into a project that not only brings additional community space and gathering space to the community, additional commercial tax space, and also a residential product that we do not have elsewhere in the community as yet.
So we're excited that JJR, I think, is bringing this project to Somerville. I think the changes that you guys had input on, I guess, last month or the month before are great. The project looks wonderful and we're looking forward to moving there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hayward Hudson.
I really came tonight to hear what the board found with regard to the 609 South Magnolia Street, because I raised questions at the last meeting about the prudence of demolishing house in the historic district, that while it doesn't contribute in a major way, it still contributes to it did contribute to the establishment of the historic district. And I think it's a bad precedent to set to start demolishing these historic properties just because somebody wants to improve their view or to make it a green area, or whatever the purpose was that was cited. I'm really interested in what the board found on your inspection, because I wanted myself to go over and take a look at it because I have had to clean up a lot of properties that appear to be in bad shape, but after they're cleaned up, they look a lot better, and you can see the beauty of the wooden floors and some of the other features that might have been hidden by garbage and trash and debris. I hope that you found a property on your inspection that's worthy of being saved and restored. I agree with everything that Peter Gorman said because independently, a member of the board, not myself, but a member of the board, did talk with neighbors, and they found the same facts to be true that Peter found on talking to the neighbors, that we were a bit deceived by the applicant as to the purpose for demolition. And he got a really good deal on that property. And so I feel strongly that the applicant's desire to demolish it should be rejected, because I don't think the basis that he has cited is has any merit. I think we have to support the historic district ordinance. We can't let people come to Somerville and want to demolish the structures that we're trying to preserve in the historic district. On the
Hayward, that was 3 minutes.
yeah, I'm finished with that. Can I address just the other project? I'm interested in hearing what the architects have done to address Ms. Burton's comments last time, which much appreciated, and Mr. Kennedy's on the.
Hayward, we have to respect everyone's time, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Chris Collar.
Evening, board. Thank you for your time. I'm here to speak about 208 South Cedar. I am here speaking for myself, but if you don't know, I am general manager of CPW, and I'm also on the executive committee for the Chamber of Commerce. But I know I'm just one vote. But I say that because JJR has come up and presented to the chamber a couple different times, executive committee, full board, and it's been unanimous excitement about this project. Folks that I deal with in the development through CPW are also very, I have not heard a negative comment about this project. As the Campo said, not just because of the mixed use and what it's going to bring to the town, but also because of the appearance. And I do want to tell you that I think it's very architecturally pleasing, a little bit biased because there's a lot of similarities to the CPW building where I've been, for 34 years, new building since 2018 with the brick and the metal cladding. I think it's a very nice product. I do, as the Campos said, want to tell you, you did a really good job with your comments. I think they've been addressed, but I'm an engineer by trade, so symmetry, I understood the symmetry of the windows and your comments there and what they've done with building I facing Richardson. I think you've all done a great job to yourself. But again, this is a special mixed use project. CPW has an out parcel that we're reserving for a project like this. Obviously a lot smaller, but so very happy to see that. So hoping to see your approval come very soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's all we have for public comment unless there's anyone else who arrived late. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name's Jack Ellis and I'm part owner of the corner property on Cedar and Richardson that, adjoins this development. I also think the development looks really good. The renderings look really good. And my only problem is the 6-foot privacy fence that goes from sidewalk to sidewalk all along the property. On the north side, there's a little bit of shrubbery on our side of the fence. But on the other side, up against the restaurant and the other buildings, there's nothing. It's just a black privacy fence. In general, I just don't think privacy fences in the historic district are a good idea. They're not in your guidelines. I mean, in your guidelines, it says you should discourage the use of them. They should put in a good landscape buffer and edge and meet the other existing uses in the area. And we have a couple of commercial buildings and it'd be really easy to do. But anyway, I don't like privacy fence. And the renderings, they aren't shown very well, but it does extend from sidewalk to sidewalk at a 6-foot height. And I don't think that's good for the historic district. Thank you.
All right, with no other public comments, we'll get started with old business. Those are applicants, so you can get started.
Our first. Go ahead.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Fisher. I am on the development team for JJR. I would just like to take this time to thank the Historic District Board for the privilege to be able to present our Cedar Street project tonight, named Bon Air Park. As I'm sure our Director of Development, Patrick Head, will reiterate during his presentation, we would like to also thank staff for all their input and collaboration on this effort, which we firmly believe will make historic downtown Somerville an even better place. And I will turn it over to Patrick. Thank you.
Thanks, Becca. Good evening, members of the board and town staff. My name is Patrick Head with JJR Development, and I'll be presenting our submission this evening for the development team. We appreciate the board taking the time to review our Bon Air Park project, and we are especially thankful for the input and feedback that town staff has provided to us as we work to refine this extraordinary design and development effort. As you will see in a moment when I present the subtle modifications to the project, we studied the board's comments from our last presentation, and we have adopted about 90% of the suggested architectural refinements that were made. We spent time simplifying and organizing window sizes and placement throughout the project, and we reorganized floor plans to make those changes work. In addition to that, we restudied the end elevation of Building I on the single unit that faces Richardson Avenue. We have completely redesigned this facade as well as the entire end unit, and we believe we now have a building that addresses the street and creates a thoughtful transition from the more residential area of Richardson Avenue to the much more commercial part as Richardson approaches Hutchison Square. Additionally, we relocated the penthouse element on this unit and positioned it inward to have the intentional effect of less height and massing on the street. We are excited to share these changes with you tonight and believe we have successfully refined an already great project that we are very proud of. As we walk through the changes, please keep in mind that our request before you tonight is final board approval with final details to staff. While we recognize that the board may have additional comments and suggestions, we need a definitive up or down vote, as anyone would. We respectfully request that if you approve the Bon Air Park project as drawn, we can handle the remaining details with a very capable town staff. In the first conceptual BAR meeting, it was reiterated multiple times that the height, scale, massing, and architectural direction was acceptable, and the board opined that it was. No project of this scope and scale could move forward without a definitive approval and assurance of its vested rights. Before looking at the changes to the drawings, I'd like to read through a list of board comments from our last presentation with our written response to those changes for the record. And I also provided a copy for each of you so you can follow along. The board's general comments from the May 2nd better highlight the green space, especially along the perimeter of the project. All perimeter areas to include privacy fence and plantings where possible. This would also include the fence line that he was speaking about, although it may not be clearly shown in the renderings. There will be planting where planting fits. That was part of our first conceptual board approval that had to do with setbacks. Study whether metal cladding should be uniform, currently as shown in different patterns. We agreed cladding types have been minimized and are more consistent throughout the project. Consider adding more brick detailing to the residential facades to give additional interest and depth. We would like to review this item with staff during construction detailing, but substantial brick exists in this project. Any adjustments would be minor refinements in selected areas. Consider adding detail to the upper facades of the promenade, maybe Juliet balconies or similar to create more depth. Not this time, as the architectural intent is elegant simplicity with the use of historic Somerville materials, but we can confer with staff at a later time and add any minor refinements that would improve the appearance at the discretion of the architecture and development team. All right, moving on to building specific comments. Building A, there were no comments. Building B, the front commercial units windows are well organized. Study if more depth in the brick adjacent to the windows can be achieved, similar to building A. We did look at this. The space between the windows is too narrow to further, and further brick detail is not possible. The windows are already set back from the brick to maintain a substantial sense of depth. Building B, C, and D, provide details on the steel beams and the columns at the ground floor public facing facades and how they'll be maintained. The steel details will be maintained as part of the HOA common area maintenance regime using a very high quality paint typical for this application. Building B, the building would benefit from more symmetry in the window layout, especially on the main public facing facade. An additional window should be added at the third floor to match the floor below. Window organization was restudied and revised to create more symmetry and harmony on the facade. The window pattern and overall facades are now more balanced. Building C and D, the small windows on the public facing facade are out of place. Consider replacing these with full-size windows. Additionally, look at ways to better balance the double and single windows on the facade to provide better symmetry and harmony. Thank you. The small windows on the front facade have been removed and replaced by full-size windows. The window organization has been restudied and revised to create more symmetry and harmony on the facade. And the window pattern and overall facade are now more balanced. Building C and D, better organize the windows on the rear facade to provide more alignment and symmetry. The window organization has been restudied and revised to create more symmetry and harmony on the facade. The window pattern and overall facades are now more balanced. Building E and G, front and side facades have well-organized windows. Eliminate the small window at the rear facade and bring better harmony and symmetry to the rear window pattern. Small windows on the rear pattern have been replaced by full-size windows and the facade is now more balanced. Building E and G, provide better detail at the top metal panel cutout front facade. Use brick header detail or similar to reinforce that opening. A brick header detail has been added to the top of the metal recess area. Building F1 and F2, study the window layout on the rear facade. The small windows are distracting, eliminate if possible. Small windows on the front facade have been removed, that's the rear facade, and replaced by full-size windows. The window organization has been restudied and revised to create more symmetry and harmony on the facade. The window pattern and overall facade are now more balanced. Same building, rear facade, steel beam and columns seem out of place and are different than details of other garage openings. Study alternatives to make it more consistent, keeping in mind this facade terminates the public green area. Additionally, the column at the rear is not shown in plan. The steel beam and column have been replaced with brick headers at the openings and brick pier/wall in the middle. The change at the base along with the revised window pattern above makes a more elegant facade facing the park. Building F1 and F2 How is roof vertical metal panel area detailed? This is shown differently than other similar to the roof study to ensure consistency in the project. The small roof has been given coping at the top and the metal cladding has been revised to match the penthouse cladding detail, creating a more consistent facade. Building H, the front facade seems to work. Consider minimizing small windows where possible. Front facade has remained as submitted. Building H, many horizontal windows on rear facade are out of place, replaced with full-size windows to maintain symmetry. The small windows on the rear facade have been replaced by full-size windows. The facade is now more balanced. 2 small windows on the side facade have also been removed to make the elevation simpler. Building I, front and rear facade appear to work. The right facade facing Richardson Avenue needs restudy. The vertical strips do not work. It needs to address the scale of the other buildings along Richardson Avenue. Perhaps more symmetry in the window layout would help. We have completely redesigned the end unit of Building I to face Richardson Avenue with more traditional and symmetrical facade composed of a 2-story porch with 3 window bays and a front entry. The 2-story porch presents a more diminutive elevation to the street that is now residential in nature. The rooftop penthouse was moved away from the exterior parapet facing the street and into the interior of the rooftop. This has resulted in less height and mass visible from the street. To achieve all of this, the interior unit was completely redesigned. The end result is a building that is not only better scaled to the residential buildings along Richardson Avenue, but has a street elevation that presents itself as a primary facade, with a more traditionally detailed and scaled porch element expressing a residential feel being less stark, all done without an adverse impact to the project. To further amplify the residential characteristic of this one unique facade, we are using a high-quality, thick hardy plank or boral plank product, but sticking to the tried and true historic Somerville materials, brick and metal on all the other exterior elements. Okay, so as we move into the elevations of the project, we put together a side-by-side comparison of each elevation, showing in notes in red the changes that we made. So looking at the screens, Building A, the restaurant building, had no real comments, so we have made no changes to this building. Building B, these are the front and right elevations. You can see that we've added a window at the upper floor and we've realigned the windows to create more symmetry. This, we also redesigned some of the interior to make these windows work. Can't see. On the right elevation, we've realigned the windows in the stair and resized them to all be consistent. Would you like me to wait for? Okay. No worries. Continuing on Building B, this is the rear elevation and the left elevation. Mostly just on that rear elevation, we've realigned the windows, added some to create more symmetry and made sure everything is vertically aligned. On Building C and D, as you continue down the promenade, we have removed all the small windows that seemed out of place. And we have readjusted those double windows to be singles and aligned everything consistently to create more symmetry. On the side facing the park space, we've added a window just to continue that rhythm. On the rear and left elevation, we've also removed a few windows and realigned some to create more symmetry. And removed the out of place small window on the rear facade. On Building E and G, as you go down the park, there's no changes on the front facades other than adding the brick header at the top. So that should have been noted. On the rear facade, we have removed the small window and realigned the larger windows to have more harmony. Moving to the buildings facing the church. building F. On this building, we've added a coping at the top roof on the front metal element, more in line with the roof coping behind it. And then we've also changed that roof cladding to a standard standing seam, similar to all the other metal elements in the project. At the rear is where the major changes on this building were. We've removed the steel that you can see down in the lower previous submitted elevations and replaced with brick header courses and a little brick wall to separate the entry door from the garage door. Then we've also removed all the small windows and added larger windows. This one took a little bit of time as we had to redesign the kitchen and the master bedroom and bathroom. But we agree it does look a lot better. Moving on to building H at the terminus of the promenade. There were no changes to the front facade. At the rear, we removed the small windows and added larger windows just to create that symmetry. And then we removed 2 small windows on the side elevation that we felt were extraneous. All right. At building I, we have completely redesigned the end unit to better address the street and provide a true secondary front door to this project. We added a 2-story porch element with large entry door facing Richardson to bring down the scale of the building and to better address the street. To further reduce the building's height and mass along Richardson, we moved the rooftop penthouse to the back of the unit and away from the street. With its reduced scale and the residential feel of the porch element facing Richardson, the building now provides a strong transition, both from the residential to commercial along Richardson and from Richardson to the project. We believe these refinements, which took considerable thought and study to resolve, create an elegant face to the project and address prior board comments. And on the rear, you can see the only real changes was that penthouse and the addition of the porch. Just for, whoops, resized on me. All right. Just for clarity of how this all worked, made this little diagram to show the porch element facing Richardson is now much more diminutive on the street. And then you have this typical parapet height behind it, and the mass of the penthouse has been pushed back so that it's not really present on the street. And you'll see that again in the renderings. This is the civil plan just to show that change at the building I. Nothing else has changed. Okay, moving into renderings, we have also updated the renderings for the project to reflect the changes we previously detailed in the elevations.
Patrick, can you go back to that site plan one more time?
Yep.
That's cool.
What would you like to see?
Just right there, just a second. Okay, thank you.
Got it. Okay, we have also updated the renderings for the project to reflect the changes we previously detailed in the elevations. Please keep in mind that the renderings are artistic representations and are secondary to the drawings. If any discrepancy exists, the elevations take precedence. In addition to providing the full-size renderings, we have also provided side-by-side comparisons with the renderings from the previous submission to help highlight what has changed. Because the changes to building I were very significant, we have included an additional rendering in aid of the board's review. Okay, so I'll start with the left image. You can see in this view, I know it's hard to see at this scale, but the window patterns are much more regular than they are in the lower. And then the building I back here, you can see that the rooftop has flipped over to the other side compared to down here. So it's away from the street. In the view 2, just this mostly noticeable on the rear facade that the window pattern has become a little cleaner. I know they're subtle in these renderings, but In the front view of the site, you can see that the window pattern is more regular than here. There's no more small little windows. And then looking into the garden space, the end unit has completely changed. No longer has a bay on it. There's a canopy with a more symmetrical facade. And then the buildings, as you go into the background, have a more regular pattern. And I'll show these larger once we get through the comparisons. All right. Building F across from the church, you can see the pattern has been changed, although it's incorrectly shown in our renderings. It is correctly shown in the drawings. The rooftop of that element now has a coping more in keeping with the rest of the roof. And then looking the building behind, you can see the small windows that were visible in this view are now removed, as well as this sort of end window that was hanging out there. And it's much cleaner, simpler facade. Looking at the view along the promenade, the window pattern is much simpler and consistent, with less little windows moving down. View inside the park, looking at the end of C and D. Again, these windows have been added to continue that pattern, and the double windows that you see here have been removed. You can also see the back of building F down here, which had small little windows, are now more regular and keeping and consistent with the project. The view looking back from the center park, looking down the promenade, just showing that those windows have been added to complete that consistency. This view looking from the park back towards building F gives you a better view of those windows, as well as the garage door, and I think much better with much more symmetrical facades. And then the view looking from building F back towards the really only change in that view is this end unit has, you can see some of the windows have changed. And then this last aerial, the rear facade of building C and D is visible here, as well as the rear facade of building F with the window changes. And then you can see the porch element that has been added on building I, as well as the penthouse being pushed back away from that facade. All right, and then again, this is kind of go through these quickly. And this is that additional view that we added, showing the porch element and an entry, and that the penthouse has now been pushed back off the facade, so it's not as visible or readable from the street. It's a much shorter elevation. I'm just going through these quickly.
Q3 real quick, Ariel, Q3.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And these are the materials we showed last time. They've not changed. Just the example of what we're planning to use. The light that we're planning to use that's provided by Dominion. And then this was just updated to show that porch element on building I, but no other changes were made to this drawing. Mhm.
Patrick, if you don't mind, pointing out the privacy fence location where y'all plan.
So as part of our conceptual project, there was we agreed to fences with green buffer space where possible. So there's actually a privacy fence on all these property lines. This one's shown as a walkway, but there will be some green along it. It's sort of the back entrance to the restaurant, but we will definitely put, it's about a 10 or 12 foot walkway. So there'll be space for some planting.
The privacy fence, is that at y'all's request or is that neighbors?
That's actually part of your UDO for a reduction of buffers. So it was part of our approval and the conceptual request to reduce some of the buffer zones, and that was voted on in the first hearing. So that it's a detail we're happy to work out with staff, but that was what that's from.
As far as privacy fences as they approach the street, we have been stepping them down for the last couple of sections,
Mhm.
which may address the previous concern by.
Right. Well, I will say I'd like to finish the presentation, but I'll say one thing about that is that I don't know that the privacy fence will go to the property corners at the street, if that's the concern. On the Cedar Street side, it would definitely stop at the front of the building. It would not go past that. And then just, these are the same materials that we showed at the last hearing. And I'm not going to go back through all the drawings. I will leave it at that. And I just wanted to say a few closing comments. Again, on behalf of Jeffrey Roberts, myself, and the entire design team, thank you for taking the time to review our submission. We are strong believers and supporters in the town of Somerville, respectful of its history and traditions, and believe this project will extend the vibrant, thriving, and pedestrian-friendly downtown that already exists. It will be a model for others to follow. It is our objective to move this project toward construction as quickly as possible, and our goal is to start construction on Bon Air Park before Mayor Waring leaves office. We believe we have thoughtfully considered the board and staff comments and have successfully incorporated the majority of those comments into the project for its betterment. The development and architectural team on Bon Air, both individually and collectively, are highly experienced and have won a countless number of awards and accolades for a substantial body of work in historic districts. Having enlivened whole areas, historic downtown Somerville, the original Somerville, deserves this kind of attention that our team is uniquely suitable to give. We would not be doing this unless we were supremely confident of the town's upward trajectory. We look forward to working with town staff and are excited to see this project become reality. Now, if any of you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I want to thank you for moving the penthouse further in so that you don't get that immediate height, kind of slamming you in the face. That's a help. I'm purely looking at aesthetics. I'm not the engineer or the architect, so it's appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. When I saw this package, I was really, really happy to see how you had taken all of the comments from us and then reviewed it and made the whole project better. I think without a doubt, we can all agree that each building looks balanced. It looks beautiful. It fits the scale of our community. And it will be a great asset to our community. So I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that your team has shown in reviewing our comments and then reinterpreting what you needed to reinterpret to get those results. And I mean, overall, I really would like to just say bravo to you, to your team.
Thank you. We appreciate it, and we appreciated the thoughtful comments you provided.
One of the things I appreciated was the way you showed what was in the previous plan next to your changes with the redlining. That was so helpful to me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one on the board who found that helpful, as opposed to flipping through a million pages and trying to figure out which page went with which. So thank you.
No problem.
I am very enthused about this project, and I support it completely. Unless anybody else has an issue with it, I would make a motion that it be.
I would only like to make one comment, and I would like this to be really considered as something that perhaps you could consider and follow up with the board. And it's on building I. And where the revised unit meets the rest of the block, you have a vertical recess that's the metal panel. Elsewhere, you've had it with a brick top, like on buildings F1 and F2. I realize this is a different building. And my only question is, and this, it could be that you decide that it's what you have is the best. Like sometimes when you review it, what you have is the best. But I'm only wondering, when I'm looking at the black and white, it means one thing, but when you put it in color and it's dark and then it matches the dark railings on the top, does it blur together and just all look like one thing? And should it be separated? I don't know that.
I'll say that I appreciate your comment. I had the same exact concern, and we drew 4 different versions, and this was definitely the best.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, sometimes I do think that, you know, you can look at architectural solutions and what you've presented. I think I do like it, but I was just wondering about, was that color piece too strong? If you've reviewed it and you are confident that this is the best solution, and I agree in every other way, it's a really good architectural solution. I'm happy to have you follow up as you.
We tried thinner, we tried all brick, we tried different windows.
Yeah,
This was the cleanest, simplest, and seemed to match the project the best.
right.
Patrick, did you consider we'll call it the hyphen, continuing all the way to the parapet rather than stopping below the parapet like you currently have it? So that it was truly, because I kind of see the little bit different, slightly different architecture between, we'll call it the first 4 bays versus the last bay. And if that hyphen extended all the way to the parapet, it might kind of separate that end unit as something slightly different. Just a thought. You know, I don't know if y'all studied that or not.
We didn't really look at it, but I don't know that would help the building. It would make it less consistent with the rest of the project. But I do see your suggestion.
But David, with that comment, I turn it back to you to make a motion.
I've got a couple questions real quick. First of all, I want to thank you guys, especially for building I and addressing Richmond Street elevation greatly improved. And I do like it significantly better. And all the improvements were significant and great. So thank you. To go to building H, if you don't mind. The elevation of building H, the front elevation. And I'm just, well, if you could kind of zoom in there on building H a little bit. It's a little bit pixelated on our screen. There you go. Thank you. That helps our pixelation a lot. So to me, it's a little odd that we have that one bump out that's different. And I'm just kind of curious from an architectural perspective, why did y'all choose to do that versus keeping the symmetry of that building consistent. I understand the FAR building has those bump outs, but that rhythm repeats, and there's just a random bump here.
That is actually a different unit than the other three adjacent to it, and it's the same unit as the other building. This was a question I think that came up in the last presentation that we had answered, and it didn't appear that there was concern with it. But the reason for it is that it's a different unit than the other three.
It's not as deep
It's not as steep as the other buildings.
as.
Correct.
So they needed.
Oh, you got the back space where it cuts in.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's why I asked you to look at that. All right, and then on that same building, if you'll go look at the left elevation. Right there, those two top unit windows are really small. Could those not be the same size? So the elevation on that is consistent?
I don't believe they can. I believe we eliminated every small window we could.
What's going on up there that?
So it's a staircase and a bathroom.
Right. But so the staircase,
I mean, I'd also point out that this elevation faces another building about, 25 feet away.
Right.
It's not a primary facade that you're really going to
Primary.
perceive.
all right, and then the last one I just want to ask you about is on, and I'm sorry, I don't know the number of this one, let me get to it, I think it is building A, the backside of building A.
Which building? A?
A,
A?
that's an
As in
apple.
This building?
Yes, and the backside of that. Yep, that one's there. So, I guess that's a function of the interior layout again, why we have
Yeah, that's kitchen, back of house.
kitchen back.
Yeah, it's a restaurant.
All right, and that recess of that panel right there, have y'all looked at that yet?
Which panel?
Well, the brick detailing right there, that would just be one thing that I would want to see is that has some depth to it.
Mhm.
So it reads like, hey, we filled in these windows versus just being a.
Yes, definitely. It will not just be a flat panel. It would be sort of as if you filled in,
Okay,
keep the rhythm of the facade, which was the reason for doing it that way.
yes, okay, great. I think those were mine.
Okay, well. I don't know how far I got, other than saying, unless there any other comments, I would move that we proceed with giving this a final approval.
I'll second.
You second again?
I'm seconding you.
All right, please answer yes or no for me. David,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Nancy Jean,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
and mine is yes also.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Look forward to seeing it built.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
You're welcome. Good luck.
I'll let you drive the rest of it.
Our next
Nah.
project,
All yours.
while they're getting set, our next project is 800 South Main Street.
Evening. My name is Mike Taylor, here to, I think, just talk about the front facade of 800 South Main. At our last meeting, we went over the whole building and I think everything was good on the right, left-hand side and the back. And we just wanted to try to make front match what it was originally from years ago. So pulling out the storefront that was put in, obviously, since the building was first built, putting in the two over two windows on the right and left-hand side of the existing front door that would stay. We have included railings that will be necessary because it's a commercial building for safety. And I think those were the big changes. So the deck, and the windows and the railings.
Becca, could you zoom in? Just to the front elevation.
And do we happen to still have that photo y'all had in your last presentation that showed what it looked like, not currently, but originally? Can you pull that up? Relatively easily? Okay. All right, thank you for doing this. I mean, you did exactly what we asked you.
Good.
And that's why we kind of sometimes get these things drawn up so we can kind of make sure that this looks right. So I'm just kind of curious how well it pulled off versus that original elevation. Original photo.
I think other than the railings that we're putting up, it's gonna match exactly. That door, I believe, is original. So by taking out that other storefront and the glass across the top and adding those two windows on the side, that'll be custom made. Those are 4 foot wide by 6 foot tall. So they'll be nice, big windows, not quite as big as the ones on Short Central that we built and put in over there, but certainly will match the existing front exterior.
And then with the 6x6 posts matching what was historic.
Yes. So those are 6x6 posts. We went with square pickets just to kind of keep that square with the post and the pickets and,
What was the height of the rail last time we debated that? What it had to be?
I believe, because it's commercial, it'll be 42 inches. I will confirm that. I would prefer them to be slightly lower.
I think you're right.
But I think because it's commercial, it'll be 42. And while you're looking at the picture of
Anybody else want to
the
see this?
original, we haven't spoke a lot about color. At the last meeting, y'all agreed to the roof color, which is like a charcoal color, matching the 5B that was there before. But the building, we want to paint a white, but that charcoal color, we wanted to include the detail around the windows and then around the foundation to match the roof. And then I've got a V cap that's also on top of those railings that would I think pull it together as well with that charcoal.
Do we have a color sample in this package?
The last meeting, I brought the big sample of the roofing material in.
I just don't recall when you're talking about charcoal, like.
Right.
What exactly that means.
Darker, but yes, it's kind of general. Oh, no. And there's a million.
Rachel,
That's white.
can you turn, yeah, I can't hear him if you don't have the microphone on. Ding, ding.
Do you have any?
All right, well.
concerns?
Mike, you did exactly what we asked you. And my concern about what we asked them to do is that the rails are too prominent. They're too big, especially at 42 inches. And you brought that up last time.
Mhm.
And, understand that we have to have the rails and it's also we can't encroach into the street anywhere. And then last week, I guess I was at Kiowa and I noticed, would you put the original picture up, Becca, or the current picture of what it kind of looks like today? And what they presented last time was basically keeping these really long poles, which always just looked a little odd. And then I saw this example at Kiowa where they solved that problem by doing that. I'll just pass it for my fellow board members to see. So this would be basically keeping the original poles like you originally had it, getting rid of the railings and the decking that you added, but solving those really long poles in a little bit different way. And I just wanted you guys to look at that, and I'll let you see it next, Mike, to see what I'm talking about. And it just solves that railing. You don't get rid of the deck, you keep the existing deck that's there, or you can, of course, redo that to make it look better if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, I see.
Mhm. Like that. We showed him that.
He's-
Now you get.
So you're still changing the windows like you did, but just making those, instead of putting in that front porch, basically leaving the porch where it is, but then we're treating the poles by bringing them up to the current finished floor with a base per se, so that the columns look appropriate to the building.
Were there always stairs? I've even forgotten what I just looked at for existing
Well,
or original.
originally the stairs were in the front, but of course the right of way
So it
was
had a porch and then the
and
stairs
thin
down.
steps. And then,
Because what I wondered then is if the railings are too much, should we do like try not to match, try not to make it look historic, try not to say, oh, we're pretending it's all original.
Mhm.
And maybe we should do something like cable rails so that they're really light, invisible, and clearly different. And then they don't have that same mass and heaviness that the pickets do. And we're back to that massing and shape of the original. And also, I think I quite like the side stairs. As opposed, I like having the stairs go up on the side as opposed to these on the front. I still find that a very awkward entry into the building. Like you're balancing on the top step and trying to open the door and get in.
well, I don't know.
Yeah.
In general, I'm kind of opposed to the cable rails on a old building, you know. If it was a new addition, I feel differently about it, but I don't know.
I don't think it has to be exactly like it was once upon a time.
No,
To have it
it's not.
fit in the downtown. I like very much the image that you brought from Kiowa. It looks like it would fit in the downtown area, even if it's not the exact duplicate of what originally was. It
Yeah.
just looks less awkward.
Mike, do you have that drawing?
Oh, I've got it. So, you know, on here, I don't know what that is at the bottom. It almost looks like concrete board maybe and then painted. If we were gonna do something like this, I think to kind of keep it with this building, we could do the 6x6, run it to the ground, and then we could wrap the 6x6s with brick of same similar size as the front, paint that like the building, and then I think you're getting your separation that you wanted maybe.
I'd like that.
Yeah, I mean, the details for your construction, and, you know, I'm okay with it. It doesn't have to be exactly like that. That was just a solution.
Yeah, sure. It definitely.
I drove by and I went, oh, that's that problem we were trying to solve on that building like that, so.
You all had the answer.
It's not, it's just-
And Mike, are you thinking that the stairs go up and they just like what's the existing, or are you gonna rebuild those and get a bit of a landing, or what are you doing?
We weren't going to do anything with the stairs. I mean, if we put a landing there, you're gonna pretty much walk out the stairs and fall off the porch.
I know.
But it is.
Is
but it
that-
walking up
is-
that door. the stairs right there. But
Is that legally allowed under the building code that you can have a door with stairs like that?
well, I think if the historical board says that you want to keep it like that, I think that supersedes some of the building codes.
In talking with our deputy building official, they have waived certain requirements of the building code. But those have all been for residential projects, so I haven't spoken with them about commercial projects and how they would feel on that. My inkling is that if it's a commercial project, they're going to want it to be to code. And I mean, technically, this front porch that would be added is,
It would
or
be
the
code.
railings are, that's new. So,
Right, but if you don't change the stairs, typically,
right,
going from my experience building all over the low country, typically it's your grandfather's in and that doesn't happen. Updated.
that would be, yeah, that would be the building official's
But
call.
absolutely.
Yeah, so,
Completely agree. From my experience, that's what, like in Charleston, when we do a historic renovation, the front doors never meet ADA requirements. I mean, they just don't. And so that's why you create one in the back.
Right.
All right, well, what's y'all's preference? What do y'all, you like this look with the rails or the other look with keeping it more the way it is? Create a base on the foundation on both.
I'm inclined to like the latter.
The Kiowa version.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'm gonna need more clarification than the Kiowa version for my,
It will, let's leave what everybody else has to say.
This will be the first time something brought from Kiowa saved money.
Right.
Rachel?
I don't really have a preference. I think either could work. And I think either would look fine on Main Street, so I will bow to the board's decision.
Yeah, I like the front porch on the building and it worries me having customers and your clients walking out right out the front door and being right there on the street. I do think the little pickets, the square pickets are distracting. But I don't know what the answer is to that.
Well, one thing I would say, having driven by that store for 50 years, the Kiowa version with those bases keeps the character of that building much better than adding a porch with the required pickets. And I think it would be a improvement over what it is now, but would carry on the character that's been there for the 50 years I've been here. So that's my feeling.
Mike, what's your opinion? Not like putting you on a spot.
Mike, can I see that photograph?
Yeah.
I wanna see it.
Yeah, I think certainly I can see your point. If we put the brick around the bottom, because those poles are gonna be tall. I mean, they're gonna be,
It just didn't look right.
I mean, by the time we go to the ground with them, they're gonna be 12 feet tall. And 6 inches wide, so they're gonna look small. If we can bring some brick up at the bottom, and I think the key is not to build it out too much. I mean, I want to get the brick
So it
and
needs to be
bring it
tight.
tight,
Yeah.
really tight. And then we can
Yes.
finish the top with brick as well and 45 those corners. I think that would definitely break it up. So,
Look
I'm
left.
just gonna suggest that if we do this version, the brick to the outside won't work. Because to make that work, I think what you'd have to do is cast a concrete base and then just parch it and paint it. So that, you know, your connection, you know, your uplift and all your connection is in that concrete base. Because you can see the way they pull that off is it looks like the columns are sitting on top of that foundation. And if we just put brick around it, then it's just gonna give it a completely different look than what that is right there. So I would say we either do that or we do that. But I don't like the brick wrap. Okay.
So you're talking about putting a foundation around.
Well, what this shows here is you can see this is some kind of, let's just call this concrete. 'Cause I'm assuming that is concrete. So that's concrete. Do you see how that matches up right there? And I think that's the defining detail that makes it work. Is that it looks like it's sitting on top of that and not wrapped around.
Right.
And I think the wrapping around it is gonna give a different.
Well, it also is potential
For
cause
rot
for
out.
future rot.
Absolutely.
I agree with you.
Could it be done with, is like just wrapping the base in different ways to create a base?
It could be. Yeah, you could let the column come all the way through and then just clad it with
We could-
wood.
We could, you know.
So
and
that you build it out that way, that would be another way, just, and then paint it and give it put a base around it, you know, around
so
it.
you could get that plinth look.
Right, yeah, you could get that plinth look, because it's kind of sloping out. But yeah, I agree, that could definitely be out of wood. Okay, I'll make a motion then that we approve the front elevation with the windows and the doors like you have it. But incorporating a detail like this, construction detail of how you actually make it, it's up to you, but with the sloping plinth that matches the finished floor of the existing structure.
And then some kind of base on.
And then a
the
base on top of it,
side.
just like this, just kind of match that detail. Right
So,
there.
so to me, that's gonna be a poured concrete that we're gonna set our post on.
You could do it that way, or you could do like Rachel's saying, which is post all the way through and then build it out of wood and give you that illusion of this space. The concrete will be the most durable, longest lasting, best.
Right, I'm not really liking the wood sitting on the concrete. Because
It'll rot
sit
away.
there and
Yeah.
that's where the rot. is gonna
More
come from.
moisture,
So
yeah.
if we did the brick, I was gonna wrap the posts with a fiber cement like material, so
Right.
that it would stick. So.
Yeah. Just don't think that wrapping that gives it the correct look like this elevation does.
Okay.
So the entrance would be in the front.
The entrance is gonna be, put back up the current picture.
Yeah.
The entrance will be. Get that right. It'll basically be the same. It won't change. It's not gonna move.
Mhm.
Correct.
I want to state that again.
All right, so that we approve the front elevation with the new window placement as shown in the drawing presented by Mike. But with a change of the columns to be per this photograph. Or like this photograph. So. That's
Exhibit A.
exhibit A. Better make a copy of it.
And do you like that paper?
I think that's important, yeah.
Okay.
I think paper is important.
Paper it is.
Okay.
A second.
Second.
A second.
All right, please answer for me. David?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Nancy Jean?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
And I say yes.
Yeah.
Good,
Well, so
yeah.
he pulls it off. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Our next project is 217 Marion Avenue.
Good evening, board.
Hello.
My name is Yulia Apostolova. I am at 217 Marion Avenue, and I'm here to get an approval to build accessory building. It will be built in the backyard, and by adding it and a nice landscaping, I believe it will improve overall property carpet appeal and increase the value of the property, which will benefit not only me but the whole community. But after all these big projects, I feel like mine is so small. So when I was here last time, there was a drawing that I presented and everybody liked it. So I went ahead and, actually got the plans for it. And I want to know what you think.
So how do you plan to, paint this?
It's gonna be the same color as the house, the main house. It's kind of light gray color. Shingles are also gray with the white trim around the windows, and trim of the house is also white.
The windows kind of match the house. You don't have any grid pattern in the windows. One
Mm.
over ones.
There's gonna be sliding door in the front, and there's gonna be just regular windows that match the house.
I think it's a nice looking building.
I think where you've located on the site looks great. And I think it'll be a nice building that you'll then be able to use from your home and have the two connected. So thank you for assessing where you could place it so that it would
Yes,
look
ma'am.
nice from the street.
Yeah, I agree.
I know you've been through the ringer coming in, presenting different placements.
I'm getting used to
but-
it.
I would vote to accept this.
Thank you so much.
presented.
Do you want to make a motion, David?
Yes, that's right.
And I'll second.
All right, great. Thank you, appreciate it.
Please answer for me. David? Yes. Beth?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Nancy Jean?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
And mine is yes.
Thank you. Somebody left the phone here.
Enjoy.
Our next one is 609 South Magnolia.
Is it appropriate for me to ask a question before he does his presentation?
Sure.
Mr. Gorman, tell me whether I heard you right. Did you say you've got some people that actually are interested in buying that property and doing something to restore it? Did I hear correctly?
Yes, when I talked to them, it was after the fact, after the property was purchased, that I talked to them and they said that they were interested in possibly buying the property and restoring it either on site or moving it as an ADU to their property.
And they were serious about it? Have they spoken to the owner?
I think the transaction happened very quickly.
Mhm. Okay, it helps to know that.
That's.
So when I was here last, we adjourned with the agreement that I've opened up and you all could come and take a look at it and tour the property and spend as much time with it you like. And also there was a lot of discussion about what were the possibilities of actually moving the property. And so I took that as an action item. I went back and investigated the moving of the property. So I put up some bullet points for y'all and share those. So a day or two after our last get together, I listed the property for sale for $1 contingent upon the house being relocated from the lot. I qualified 2 buyers that live within the village, within very close to where the property were. Their names, I won't state them publicly, but their names are in front of you. Okay. Both individuals viewed the property. The gentleman was not interested. He passed after touring the property and looking at it, inspecting it, and then thinking about it, he passed. The lady, however, she was interested to pursue the move. So we collaborated on getting an estimate from a moving company. Carolina House Movers. That estimate is attached as a second page. And they provided a written estimate in the amount of $85,000, not including the removal of the additions. There's a good portion of the house would not be able to be moved. Those were the additions, the add-on additions that occurred throughout the years. And the site reclamation. So $85,000. And also involved with that is there would have to be significant removal of the trees up front. So there's probably a half a dozen trees. I don't know if you see them, they're not out, they're out of the view there. You can see the big one there on the left. Depending on your frame of reference, but those trees would have to be removed. But based upon the associated costs, the lady decided also not to pursue the project. So, but what we did do, I mean, we had this discussion is, can it be moved and how much would it cost to be moved? And now we have that information. I made a good faith effort to pursue that, and the two candidates that I had qualified passed on the opportunity.
How did you pursue that?
I advertised it and then met with them, and they toured the property together with us, and just as I stated, yeah.
Thank
And they lived right up the street from me, so they knew the property right on the other side of the street. I've actually got their home addresses next to them.
Or did you advertise?
I put it in Somerville Homes on a Facebook group and 3 other Somerville related Facebook groups.
So Carolina House Movers, when they came to give you the estimate, did they find out the house is structurally sound to move it?
So what I learned there is they didn't care about the foundation because they pick it up and move it from the foundation. So the foundation, which is the biggest concern because it's in poor condition. It didn't matter to the home movers because they picked it up. What they did say though, the add-on, there's 3 big add-on additions. Those would fall off. Those would not be moved. And I think that's mentioned in their estimate.
That's the right side of the house when you're facing it.
Well, it's left, right, and rear.
Oh, okay.
And when you walk through the property, you can see it because it's, yeah, that one there.
Mhm.
That's on the right side. And then that one there. And then that's still the left. If it's on the other side of that one, right? Okay.
But no one was interested in buying it and restoring it.
I wasn't interested in selling it. Recall, so I don't know where I understand this, right? Just try to deceive this committee. I have not. I bought this property with the intent. I got to know the property of living as a neighbor and providing support to the previous residents. And so I knew the property. I knew what condition it was. In fact, even on the transaction, we were unable to get bank debt. I mentioned it to you last time because it could not pass an inspection. I could not even get insurance on it. I had to go to a high risk pool because of the condition of the property. So my intent always was to purchase the property, demolish it. The due diligence that we took prior to making the transaction was we confirmed that A, it was not considered a historic home, and B, that we met the criteria for demolition. So based on that due diligence, we purchased the property with the intent of demolishing it and preserving it as green space and privacy contiguous with our property right to the left of it. So, I mean, I've been clear with that and upfront with y'all on that from the very beginning. So I don't quite understand where those comments came from. Not from y'all, but from the speakers.
And before you purchased the house from your neighbor, you didn't have a home inspection done or anything?
not.
Obviously, because
I
you were
did not.
thinking of tearing it down. Okay. I went to see this property. Did anyone else on the board go? Yes, I did.
I did.
Yeah. So there were 4 of us
Yeah,
who
I
went.
did.
And
I only know 2. So, I mean, I don't know how the others got in unless the door was left open, which would be fine, but.
The doors were open.
Were they?
Yeah.
oh,
I did, and I appreciated Miss Ruby coming over, even though she wasn't feeling very well that day.
So she kept her distance.
Well, I know that there's a lot of diversity probably among our opinions on this historic house. So I'm just going to summarize what I observed when I was there. So what I saw was a kit house, of which the front corners were really the only parts that were left of that original kit detailing. And that the house has additions on the left side, the right side, and the rear, all of which have completely changed the original feeling of this house and the massing of this house and the structure of this house. And so while it's not on our register as a home that contributes significantly, it is on our register as a home that contributes in its massing and its scale on the property. And when I was in the home, it was badly damaged in every single room. So the additions were one thing, but the original home was also badly damaged, and there was no original character left except for the massing and the shape, of which what we're seeing on the front is this little front piece with the porch, which looks cute. So this is my personal opinion. I don't think that this home is something that I would say, I'm going to fall on my sword and say we need to keep it. It's an important historic home. I think that our role as board members are to evaluate, will it help our community, which it could. But if it's demolished, we also have a role in whatever would be built there in the future. And we can ensure that the pieces that make this suitable in this location are things that we would look for in the future, which would be the massing, the finishes, the details of it. So my observation is that there's very little historic value in the building beyond just its shape, and the shape is compromised.
And when I visited the home, I did notice a lot of wood rot, mold. What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, when I visited the home, I did notice wood rot, foundation issues. I looked under the house, even though I'm not a foundation expert. Just a lot of neglect that you weren't responsible for. And I did notice some mold. So like Rachel, I feel the same way she does.
Well, I mean, it's definitely been neglected. That's goes without saying. And yeah, I am torn. So I don't want to tear down a piece of Somerville that has been there for 100 years, you know. But I don't know if you could take everything off and build it, you restore it. It would take more than it's probably worth.
Well, I could not get in it over the weekend. I called and left a message, and apparently y'all were out of town. But I got in underneath it. And the support members under the house, the joists that I could see that were under the original part of the house still look to be in good condition. And this is what a mover would pick up the house. I think, and it's got that interesting whatever the effect is, interlocking effect on the corners of the original.
It's only on the three front corners.
Right. Yeah, I'm just saying, but that, I haven't ever seen that before. And I've always thought that it's a cottage in Somerville and it looks good there. And the worst thing I could think of besides demolition would be not trying really hard to move it. And this may be a situation where it takes many months to offer it to be moved and be offered through the Preservation Society. We've there have been several houses that have been moved in the community. Usually the requirement is that a place be found in the historic district for it. Now, if you take all the additions off that are in poor condition and have the central house, and somebody is willing to move it as an accessory unit onto their property, then I think that that is far superior to demolishing it. And I am not in favor of demolishing it until we have a really long, hard period of trying to find somebody who's got some use for it.
And who does that? That's my responsibility.
Well, you work with the Preservation Society and you make a much broader appeal than just Facebook. I never would have seen anything about it. I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, and I think there's an opportunity to offer it to the community through the Preservation Society and also through the town. Additionally, it's not like this house has been unoccupied for several years and trashed by a bunch of homeless drug addicts. It was lived in up until a few months ago, maybe not very elegantly, but it was lived in. And so I think it deserves a period of being broadly offered to the community. And I moved not to demolish it at this time.
I was out of town, so I did not get to inspect it. I kind of feel like I should abstain since I don't have all the full knowledge of it. But can't it be deferred for 6 months to see if he can find someone?
Reconsidered whatever the
180 days.
180 days.
Yes.
6 months.
Well,
And this was what we voted on last
Yeah.
month. Was, I just went back to the minutes and, the motion was to delay vote on the matter up to 180 days to allow time to evaluate.
It was up to, we said up to 180 days. The ordinance allows 180 days. Specifically for demolition. If it were a regular project, if the board did not make us a decision after 30 days, it would be considered approved. So up to, I mean, Mr. Ruby can come back within that 180 days, with his request, but deferring it additionally from that, you can't keep doing that, but it's from the original 180 days.
so we can retain the 180 days vote that we had last month.
Yes, but the clock started
Then
that meeting.
a month
yes.
ago, sure.
Well,
That's what I would do.
this is a little unusual, but since we have the president of the Preservation Society here, will you all help him find somebody that would like to move him?
I'm just struggling to find out where within the regulations that that I bought and purchased the property under this is now a requirement. I'm baffled. Again, like I said, I feel like the ground has shifted underneath me.
Well, you bought it at a fire sale price.
I bought it at market value. You do not know the terms of the conditions. So I
But with the
object to that
intent-
characterization.
But to buy it and then come to us and say you can't afford to fix it, I find very difficult to swallow.
If you could make more money on it by finding someone that would move it. And we don't want you to lose money on it, but if you could make more money on it and not lose money by finding someone that could move it, giving it some more time to see if somebody did want to fix the property. Yes, it would cost them some money, but that's an option and we're giving you time to do that.
Well,
I don't know.
my point,
Yeah.
it just happened, and this doesn't happen all the time. It was mentioned about the Preservation Society has helped others do this, that get rid of the house. And it just happens that we have the man in charge of it standing right behind you there. And my question is, would he be interested or would they be willing to help you in that?
You're all familiar with the CPW fund. And we did go to bat, save those houses. And there were 4 houses over there. And virtually every one of those houses was in worse condition than the house in question. They were all moved. The CPW now, we're dealing with an entity there that was interested in preserving them. They paid for the taking out the asbestos and other things that belong with the housing. I don't know about this house, but anyhow, the CPW was very accommodating. And we were able to save all 4 of them. It's up to the individual that takes the house to pay for moving it and providing a lot. And that's not very far in the past. I mean, that was done just 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, but would you assist him in helping to publicize moving this house and finding somebody who's interested in it and who has a place for it? That's the question.
We, as Peter said, we prefer it to stay in place now. I think with those 4 houses, the condition was that they would move it to a location in the historic district. I think they observed that. Not all 4 of them were in the historic, if they were placed in the Somerville area.
But Hayward,
Well,
the question is, can and will you assist him? It seems pretty clear that he has no interest in fixing the house where it is. So the choice, we can't make him fix the house where it is. So the choice is the house gets demolished by neglect or somebody helps find a place to move it in the community.
We'll help. We're always interested in helping people to preserve the properties in historic district. But it is not incumbent on us to go to expense.
We're not asking you to go to any expense.
No.
We're asking you to help publicize it and help find somebody who might want it. No expense to you. You've got a website, you've got a mailing list, you make this all knowledge available. And that's what is necessary. And the town might also make people aware of it on the town website. That's all.
Just to
Centralized.
clarify, the Preservation Society is a totally, completely separate entity
Right.
from the town.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can't enforce the Preservation Society to do anything.
No,
And I understand what you're saying. I just, for everyone here, I wanted it to be made clear. And the town also does not get involved with private property sales, renovations, things like that, other than making sure that they're code compliant.
Question, Becca. It may not be number one in the historic district, but number 4 is still supportive of the historic district, isn't it? Right
Yes,
before?
so what the example I typically like to make is if you had a CMU block building, I would consider that not contributing to the historic district. Supportive would be just a step above that.
Mhm.
And that's the State Historic Preservation Office makes that evaluation based off of the survey that they do of the property at the time. So in, I believe 79 was when it was evaluated. It was supportive at that time.
well, it's,
This places us in a very awkward, embarrassing position. Because our organization is to support the historic district ordinance and to support preservation of the houses in the historic district. And to have us try to right a wrong here. I mean.
Hayward, I think, all we were asking was, would you put it out on your website to let people know that there was such a house available if somebody wants it? And that's all. I mean, so, nothing else. And please, a yes or a no.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let me.
Well, y'all can talk later on how.
If he's not interested in the house, why isn't he interested in letting somebody else restore the house where it is?
He happens to,
Yeah.
he told us at the last month that he wanted the property, it wasn't the house. And that was, and so, I mean, he was very explicit about that. So it was us that came up with the idea that maybe we could find somebody and
Phil, can we allow this? It's not
that's-
something that we want to promote.
No,
We
it's-
don't wanna-
We can't force
No,
him,
we
we
can't.
can't force him to fix that building. We can't. So we're looking at other options.
it will destroy itself if we don't do something. And I think that's far enough that we
Yeah.
need to take it, board. How do y'all want to go?
I guess what I'd say is I make a motion to retain the deferment from last month for the 180 days, which is now 30 days less than it was last month. And see what options can take place during that time. How do y'all feel?
Do I have a second?
yeah, second, I would like to make sure that there is a very good faith effort on the part of the property owner to try and find someone. But I second.
David, I don't know that we have the authority to demand that, do we?
To defer it.
No, to demand that he do a good faith. Like, is that something that's under our,
I didn't demand it, I just asked.
okay,
I was willing to move it 30 days ago. I'll move it.
Yeah.
Days from now. That's.
you'd
that's
like to
fine.
move it.
That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I feel achieved our original objective. My only concern is the amount of trees we're gonna have to take down to move it. So y'all have to be willing to approve the removal of trees,
Mhm.
but, I would have moved it last month. I'll move it next month.
Becca, were you able to pull up like a street view so we could see those trees?
Once they take the offending additions off, it's gonna be a much easier thing to prove. Not impact as many trees, then it's removal.
Yeah, right there by the mailbox. There's that big tree right there on the other side of the sidewalk, and then all of those are the only path to the street. That's the only path to the street, right there. Good pictures. Okay. So it's ironic because, I mean, we purchased the property for a green space, and now we're going to share the green space by moving the property, but that's what it is. That's how we call it.
I think we have a motion on the floor. We have to take a
Yes.
vote.
Please vote for me. David,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Rachel,
No,
Jim,
Yes, I guess.
Nancy Jean,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
and I say yes. So we hopefully everybody can help you find individual or company that will help you move it.
We might have talked about it, it's just
Yeah.
finding somebody in the village, because you
Well-
accomplish nothing if it's not within the village, right? So that narrows the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be relatively close because the cost of relocating the power lines and everything gets absorbed if you move it in like this.
Well, fortunately, Magnolia has been used many times moving houses. It's been almost a thoroughfare for it. But anyhow, thank you, sir. Our next project is 205 Sumter.
One of these. Interest by somebody.
Thank you all. Excuse me, I'm Simmons Young. I'm here tonight on behalf of the owners, Gordon Benny and Karen Freer. They are working on a renovation and addition of this house on Sumter Avenue and at the corner of West Fifth South Street. And this is a open air gazebo or pavilion that we're looking at putting in the back corner of the lot. There's some grand oak trees, and so we've had arborists come out and look at that. The town arborist has also looked at that to make sure that we're not affecting it. Go to the next slide. It is 10.5 feet by 16 feet for the paving, and there's a fireplace that's 2.6 by 5.6. It's a wood raised concrete plinth with a wood frame and brick veneer. And we're looking at using Savannah Gray, which we used on the base of the addition. Next slide, please. And this is just a side elevation. The lattice work, the owner found some other gazebos in Somerville and thought that that would be a good complement and sort of nod to the historic gazebos that, in town. And the eave height is 8'4", so it's relatively low to it's relatively short. And the chimney is also short. Let's see, go to the next slide. This is the beginning of a wall section or a section through the column and the beams of the and column of the roof there. And then some of the materials on the right. Influence images, so just sort of a place to go out and relax in the garden. And a 3D view. And I think that is it. We did talk to the neighbor, Mr. Thornton, to the I guess left of the house if you're looking at it from West Fifth South Street. And he said he has no objections. Was glad that we had arborists on board, and then we worked with the city, and we're trying to get to select a permeable paver rather than the concrete pad that was.
Is there any reason to consider a chimney cap on that?
Yeah, there's we will have a spark arrestor on there. And I think, yeah.
I didn't know on such a small chimney whether.
Yeah, I think we'll get something that's metal. It's a good point. We just haven't metal on there. Metal, black, and small, minimally intrusive as possible.
What is the trellis made of? What
The
material?
trellis is wood, and it's we're gonna use a thicker 2x2, so instead of the less expensive cheap stuff.
They're not gonna be any appliances out there.
No appliances, a grill is, we do want a gas line for a grill.
Was there electricity to the structure at all?
Electricity will be run to it, and it's, for a fan and light.
Make a motion, we accept the submitted.
Second.
Second,
Tim, second.
please answer for me. David,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Nancy Jean,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
and mine is yes.
Done.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Our next project is 105 Hansberry Lane.
Gonna ask the same question. Actually. Gutters, I think, come before us.
Yes, let me clarify. So our guidelines, say half round gutters are preferred. So that leaves me not much wiggle room to approve it at a staff level, which is why Heath has come back before you. Because he needs some gutters on his house.
Okay, thank you. Reason for discussion.
So I'll pull up my staff report, sorry. So. Basically, under guideline 57 for gutters and downspouts, it says round gutters are preferred. And there's really no other mention of gutters design, so to speak, so.
I guess I can address it from, I have no, there's nothing wrong with half round gutters. It was just, I got, information from a few different people. And I decided on the product, that I thought was going to be best suit, the integrity of keeping, the integrity of my house. So it's nothing against, half round, but,
I'm going to ask you to speak into the microphone.
yeah, I apologize.
I have a hard time.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I just mentioned, there's nothing that I have against half round gutters. It's just, I think this product, best suits, I guess, keeping the integrity of my house, what gutters are intended to do. And so I did get quotes from a few different people. It wasn't a price thing. Actually, the product I went with was on the higher end. It was one of the more expensive ones. Yeah, I guess that's the conclusion I came to. This is so this is my parents. My parents recently built a house. And this is the exact gutter system that will be going. That's why I took pictures so y'all could see it, on Obviously, that's not my house, but it's the exact same product that'll be going on my house.
I have no problem with putting this on a new house. I think the guideline was if we had a historic house and wanted to put gutters on it or change gutters, that the half round was preferred. So I think that was the intention of.
Yeah, this is the only comment that doesn't directly address existing gutters, but you're correct. So that is something that if you like, we can revise a little, because changing the guidelines, we don't have to submit that as an amendment to go before council. If you want it to say on a case-by-case basis, reviewed by staff, that would be very helpful for me and other homeowners.
Good.
Well, I move that we accept these gutters, this young fellow.
Second.
Please answer for me. David,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Nancy Jean,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
and mine is yes. We wish you well with it.
Thank you.
So we just need to,
We addressed that other issue.
now would be great.
You do it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say that we can leave it, I'd like to make a modification to our guidelines that the half round gutters refers to historic properties. And new properties, you have the discretion to approve other alternatives.
I'll second that.
So we have a special meeting. So do we, I guess we don't.
No.
Yeah, if you want to. Yes. Yes, yes.
Under miscellaneous on your original meeting, we have a new director of community and economic development. And so I just want to introduce him real quick. And his name is Frank Neal. So he is actually, well, he's my boss, new boss. So he's under Lisa, but he is will be in charge of the planning, building and code enforcement departments. So
Thank you.
Frank.
thank you.
All right. So we'll move into our special meeting. That just, I think we can go ahead and just continue into. the special
Okay.
meeting. That's-
We got 309 South Magnolia.
Good evening, board. First of all, I appreciate you guys. First of all, I appreciate you guys entertaining us tonight. I'll try to keep it brief. We've been contracted by the Mellings at their residence to do a roof replacement. We understand the stipulation in historic Somerville is for the elevated rib to be 1 inch. When we placed our material order for S1000, it does come in 1 inch and 1.5 inch. We did specify to our manufacturer that we wanted 1 inch. Approximately 19 days ago, we actually put a halt to our project. When the material showed up, this is in excess of around $30,000 worth of metal on the ground. Material shows up obviously from 1 inch to 1.5 inches, a very small difference. So it's not something that's going to jump out at you. We were made aware of, it could possibly be larger than 1 inch. We looked, it was 1.5 inch. At that point, we did notify the town immediately. We didn't want to try to do it and then ask for forgiveness later. We wanted to do the correct thing and notify the town. We stopped construction at that point, which was about 19 days ago.
Houses at this point with plywood and a moisture barrier is what we found out. So it's like open to the elements.
Correct. Their house is open. The roof has been removed, waiting to be re-roofed at this point. It is open and obviously with the time of year we're drifting into, the tropics are coming active early with already 2 named storms. You've seen the aggressive thunderstorms we have in the pop-up in the evenings now. They already have interior damage on their house, which we're trying to obviously fix and work through a process. So we are here to ask you of leniency to approve the 1.5 inch elevated rib for the metal roof vise 1 inch. If it's not approved, where would that put us? We would have to reorder approximately $30,000 worth of material. And the bad part is it would take 4 to 6 weeks to get that material here, which would entail that their roof now has to stay open approximately 2 months, maybe a little over, maybe 9 weeks. Who knows how much more damage. We can only do so much trying to tarp and close in and dry in the roof. So we are asking for leniency on that. If that can be approved, we would obviously the Mellons, and we would be greatly appreciative and be able to continue the project immediately.
You ordered 1 inch.
We talked to our distributor when we put it in, because there's 2 variations of the S1000. There is 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches. It was brought up. Obviously, somebody made a mistake, and I mean, we'll take the hit on that as a contractor. That's where the buck stops. But 1.5 inches was delivered. So now that's what we have. We could order 1 inch, but again, that would put us 4 to 6 weeks out from today, trying to get that material redelivered.
Well, that's why I was asking if the manufacturer shipped the wrong stuff, he ought to be doubly sure of doing it faster than 4 to 6 weeks. If he wants more business.
With the color, that's the issue. I mean, you can jump through some hoops, but with the color, with the Oakland green, Hartford green, excuse me, that's just the time period we'd be looking at for the house.
Is this a historic house? I don't know the home.
Yes, ma'am.
It is.
What's our rating, Becca?
2.
There are other homes right along South End Road as well that have the CO2, but at the end South End Road is 202 East Richardson. That house has 1.5 standing seat as well, and visible from our house, the funeral home also has the exact same color and 2.5 inch standing seat as well. We just driving around town, started paying attention to what does and what doesn't. It's hard to tell what the at the 4-way stop. Coming to the red light at the A, the 2 houses, the one on the that has a black roof, we're not 100% sure, but it visibly looks to be an inch and a half as well. So it's comparing. Those are outside.
So the pictures that follow here, are they, what are you showing us there? What is
That is the inch and a half standing seam that they started to do like the same day it was noticed.
This is when we noticed.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
They had 5 feet prior to.
Going from the 5B, it also had
A cedar shake by our standing seam 5 feet on it. That's all there is to it.
So the color is a darker green.
Well, it's the same color green, it's just faded. The 5B that was on it was faded. It's the exact same color from the old pieces that were covered up when you removed it, it's the same color.
These pictures we're looking at here, this is the same material, just lights in it.
Really does need that darker green. What's on there.
Yeah, we tried to go with the darkest possible, closest to Charleston.
As historic as possible.
Not losing the value.
We have to ask these things.
Well, thank you for stopping and coming and asking us first. We appreciate that you didn't just proceed on. And I know the stress that Probably not you, but your wife. She's putting it on you. That would be my family. I don't know. I struggle with this one. Because your home is so historic. We feel like it's probably very important. This is a new home. I'd be like, oh, well, probably okay. It's not a preference, but probably not. It's kind of like the gutter discussion. No exposed fasteners in this roof. This is all everything. Oh, this is a stamp lot. Okay. What do you guys?
I'm not the engineer. I'm not the home builder. I'm not the architect. I think I would have a hard time. My view is just from aesthetics. I'm from the arts side. Being able to tell an inch from an inch and a half, I'd have a hard time with that. Y'all have tried to do the right thing. And if there are other buildings in the historic district, the funeral home and the other one at, what you said, 602 or 202? How did they get in here with an inch and a half?
Visibly, it's very hard to tell. I mean, our neighbor, Jeff and Sue, they had their home done. That's why we were actually. They were having a problem with the color of it. They wanted a galvanized color. And they were using that house for reference as well, but he brought down a piece. And I didn't send that email. I have a picture of it. It's literally, it barely creates an inch of and visible from the street. Like I said, it's hard to tell. So I mean,
It's more than you think, and it is and see, this really ought to be smaller. It ought to be a flat seam. It ought to be a half an inch. I mean, the historic roofs are a half inch with a big back and then beat down at the end. So that's. So we're kind of, when you approve the 1 inch, you're already giving higher than the historic roof. Absolutely. No, we're just talking about why is it 1 inch, right? And so historically, it shouldn't even be 1 inch. That would be less than 1 inch.
or if it's smaller on the home, it was
Exactly.
cut off.
Absolutely.
Or hammered
And
over.
hammered over, that's right. And so
When they
that,
put the other metal.
and you just can't get that roof any longer. They still make it crazy expensive. And so we kind of sacrificed or said, okay, well, we'll go to 1 inch, but let's just, the 1.5 inches becomes kind of like this new construction commercial project kind of roof.
There's a historic home we did about 2 months ago. It's really hard to,
Yeah, I'm a contractor. I get you, man. I feel really bad that y'all got the wrong product there. I completely get it. And I know, I hear what you're saying.
We're not asking for reprieve because of the number on the amount of materials laying there. Mistakes happen and there are, gains and losses. Their house is exposed.
Yeah.
And
Does it have ice and water shield on it? Ice and water shield. So
But we're talking, you're trying to keep it dried in for a total of 9 weeks with the
Right.
storms. The storms we get nowadays are much more violent than
Oh,
5-6 years ago, I think. Thunderstorms plus there's already significant damage inside. So it's like you're just continuing to put duct tape on something and it's eventually going to keep coming off. So that's where we're asking for the leniency, not because of the dollar amount. It's just the preserving their house and trying to eliminate further damage because 6 weeks could lead to a early hurricane. There's no telling. So
Maybe we could consider splitting the baby. And under the circumstances of the potential ongoing damage from having an uncovered roof, let this one be done and make it a practice going forward that any roofs that are put on in the historic district are confirmed to be the 1 inch before any roof work is done. So that this doesn't happen in the future.
I think Beckett did that in this case. I mean, they clearly knew, it just was a shipping
No,
issue,
but
right? I mean,
confirm once the material is here before they
Right.
start stripping
Before you start doing tear off.
the roof off.
Right.
We're gonna correct moving forward. We
Absolutely.
just didn't know, I mean, that metal you see right there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 panels. That's as far as we got, and then it was like, oh, crap.
Which is why we tried to reach out and do the right.
So,
We were at the end of the day on a Friday afternoon. She was coming home from work and I was like, I'll tell you something. Because I noticed it myself. I was like,
You go back to the original photo. Yeah, zoom in on that. farm if you want.
just the 5 feet. Yeah,
That's the existing, right?
but that's what was on
On,
the yes.
on the little gazebo building, how are y'all planning to do those ridges?
with Ridge Cap, but we're also planning on doing a copper accent.
Same style. as
Same
there,
style as
under
there.
the original that we found underneath there, that was,
Hmm.
yeah, that was just a bad cover up of that.
But we're gonna keep with the square edges, we're not adding.
I second your motion, David.
I don't know how others feel.
I think I agree with you, David, that under the circumstances, asking them to wait, given the season that we're in, would be putting the whole house at risk. And although we don't want an inch and a half, damage to the home would be worse.
You don't want to see damage to a historic property either.
Mm-mm.
Right.
And I mean, I also really appreciate that you stopped work
Right.
and that you came and brought it before us instead of just going, oh, you know.
Well, that's why we're actually
Yeah.
glad that you had a meeting scheduled and we could actually get
Yeah.
in because like I said, obviously time is of the essence and
Yeah.
this is a unique situation. If it was, like I said, if it was just asking because we're trying not to,
Need to make
have a loss, but
sure that in the future it does not reoccur for you or any of the other roofers working in Somerville. So, I may,
Could you solve the little gazebo piece without ridge cap? Did you get a different product? Cause that's what is out of keeping, is that ridge cap, that's
So
that.
which is the same, what you're saying, get rid of the covers that are on.
Yes,
each seat.
exactly. So just solve that. You keep the 1.5 inch roof everywhere else, but on that gazebo piece, solve that. The ridge caps are not historic. That's a detail that's
So you want
improper.
us to mechanically seeing the ridge instead of putting.
Yes.
Not ridge, but the ridge, not
The ridge, just on that one, just on that gazebo.
That one highly visible.
You get rid of that, those ridge caps.
We can do that. I have to order a few more metal because removing the other metal is
Right.
not as easy as you would think, so, yeah, I can order some. Mechanical team metal for that.
If you could solve that, I think that would make the home look way better.
I
And that
would
would kind of
agree.
make us say, that was a compromise to the 1.5 inch everywhere else.
And I'll try to find, if I don't have any, projects in our database, I'll find something online that, we got it. Yeah, we're probably getting that.
Right, sure. And ice and water shield is gonna protect that fine. Even if you had to order something.
The issues is more or less the siding and flashing and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, you mind if we make that modification to your movement? Fine. Motion. Okay.
That's great suggestion.
All right, okay. Well, with that, I can support it.
Awesome.
did you understand the motion?
Becoming an expert on this.
Good compromise then. It's good compromise.
We got a second, okay.
Like, it was fun.
We would like those to be happening.
How long have,
Yeah.
So what's it like?
I don't mind too.
how long have you owned the home?
Since, February 2020.
Well, we have,
its former glory. You know, there's a lot of stuff inside. We love that house.
It's a beautiful house.
Somerville, my wife had always wanted it. It was supposed to, I possibly can't back what it was.
Oh, that's great.
All right.
Y'all ready to vote? David?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Nancy Jean?
Yes,
Jane?
Yes.
And I say yes.
Thank you.
amen.
Thanks.
Go to work.
Very helpful.
That's a good night, thank you.
I don't have anything under miscellaneous. So if y'all don't have anything for me, I don't have anything under miscellaneous. So if you don't have anything you need to discuss at this time, we can get a motion and a second to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, turn off your thing and leave.